evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman Scott Peters. Thanks for joining us. My name is Marianne Pintar, and I'm Congressman Peters' Chief of Staff. I'll be moderating tonight's call. The Congress will kick things off here shortly. Then we'll hear from our guest, Mark Delich from Forward US. After that, we'll turn it over to you and take your questions. If at any time you'd like to ask a question during tonight's town hall, starting now, please press *3. Again, if you'd like to ask a question during tonight's town hall, press *3, and you will be transferred to a member of our staff who'll put you into the queue for questions. Also, if you'd like to stay in touch by subscribing to our newsletter, it comes out weekly via email, please press *6. Again, that's *6 to stay in touch with us and the Congressman's work via a newsletter. Please press *6. Thank you again for taking time to join us this evening. And now I'll turn it over to Congressman Scott Peters.
Thanks, everyone, for joining, and thanks, Marianne, for the introduction. I'm Congressman Scott Peters. I'm honored to represent the cities of San Diego, Coronado, Escondido, and San Marcos, and some other parts of the county in the United States House of Representatives. Tonight, I think I'd like to start with a general update on what's been happening in Washington, D.C. I'll focus on the tension around ICE and funding the government, but I also want to touch on the few things that I'm concentrating on in my own legislative work in particular. Then we're going to be joined by my guest, Mark Delich, who's Vice President for Government Relations at Forward US, to bring some additional expertise to talk about immigration policy and how we might be able to make real change. And then I look forward to a conversation with you all at the back end. So first, let's turn to funding. We are currently in a partial government shutdown. As of February 3rd, Congress passed 11 out of 12 government spending bills for fiscal year 2026, and that included funding for Departments of Energy, Defense, State, Transportation, Health and Human Services, Interior, and Commerce. It also included some money for some community projects, requests that right here in San Diego. I'm glad to share that these bills brought home $13 million for the 15 projects that I led. Anyway, so those departments that I listed are funded and functioning through September. However, we did not fund the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS. Instead, in the wake of the shocking killings in Minneapolis, we kept it open for 2 additional weeks to allow negotiations to rein in operations at Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Border. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is called ICE. Most people know it by ICE. Those are departments in Homeland Security. Unfortunately, as of Friday, Congress failed to reach an agreement and funding has expired, so DHS is in a shutdown. But even though ICE is part of DHS and DHS is shut down, ICE is still operating full bore, and I'll explain why in a bit. As you all know, in the past year, ICE has become dangerous, irresponsible, and violent. It was created after the attacks on 9/11 to enforce our immigration laws. President Trump, when he was running for office this time, promised to use ICE to find and deport dangerous criminals. It was never meant to operate as a militarized force in and against our own neighborhoods, but under this president, that's exactly what it's become. And you may remember last May in San Diego, ICE agents stormed Bona Forqueta, neighborhood restaurant in South Park. They slammed the owner against the wall. They handcuffed the employees. They deployed flashbang grenades on bystanders outside. You'd have thought they were going in after some drug kingpins, but no, they were going in. They apprehended 4 peaceful, hard-working dishwashers, not violent criminals or drug kingpins. And recently, we've witnessed the unjustified and unwarranted killings of 2 of our fellow citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, in Minneapolis. All this time, schools, small businesses, families, and children have been caught in the crossfire of ICE's reckless tactics. And it's not making our neighborhoods safer. It's making them less safe. So in November, I drafted and introduced the Stop Excessive Force in Immigration Act. This legislation would set ICE to the same standards as local law enforcement officers are required to abide by, standards that have been in place for decades. There would be strict limits on the use of military-style equipment like tear gas and flashbangs and masks. Would require always-on body cameras. Require agents to render medical aid or allow people to render medical aid. Remember, in the Good killing, the the doctors were prevented from getting to Renee Good to render medical aid. Our bill would fix that. Requires officers to intervene when colleagues act unlawfully and increases training so that agents can de-escalate situations and they can meet force with proportionate response. We've gotten 100 co-sponsors for that bill and a lot of endorsements, and we're working to get that passed. Now, the reason that ICE is very force in our own cities across the country is this. In July, President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, H.R. 1, it passed with only Republican votes in a Republican-controlled Congress. It gave ICE and Border Patrol $150 billion to fund it through the rest of Trump's presidency. Now, this level of funding means ICE has more money than the United States Marines or the Israeli Army, for example, other countries as well, and the force has been turned against Americans. So this funding was provided by the big bill from last year and did not depend on overall DHS funding, which is what we've been voting on in February. And it's not stopped or diminished because of the shutdown. So that's why a vote to keep DHS open for 2 weeks was never a vote to fund ICE. ICE was already funded at these outrageous levels by the big, beautiful bill, regardless of the big shutdown that we avoided 2 weeks ago or the DHS shutdown that we're in now. On February 3rd, we did vote to keep critical agencies running, including NIH, Medicare and Medicaid, the CDC, Social Security, and the FAA, so that millions of Americans, services millions of Americans rely on don't suddenly stop in a shutdown. A failure to approve appropriations before us on that day would have affected about 75% of the federal government, including our troops and civilian defense workers, which are big in San Diego here. Would have defunded Head Start for poor kids, NIH grants for our scientists, Title X family planning grants, community health centers that provide primary care for working families. I thought it was better to fund those things and hold out on DHS funding to allow time for negotiations, so I voted yes. But ICE funding did not go up or down from that vote because it was pre-funded by Republicans in the big bill. Unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, we did not get an agreement on better ICE and Border Patrol operations, so DHS is shut down. That's FEMA, which is disaster relief, the Coast Guard's Secret Service, and cybersecurity. So the shutdown of this agency, the DHS, does undermine our disaster response, aviation security, maritime safety, and cybersecurity, and also jeopardizes the livelihoods of tens of thousands of federal employees. But as I explained, the shutdown is smaller than it would have been, does not affect ICE or Border Patrol funding. So what are we doing now to work on ICE? First, I'm working to get more support for the Stop Excessive Enforcement and Immigration Act. As I said, 100 co-sponsors in Congress. ICE cannot continue in its current form, and my bill would hold ICE and Border Patrol to the same standards to which we hold local police, sheriffs, and state troopers. It only makes sense. Second, I'm co-sponsoring legislation to end the DHS shutdown by providing full-year funding for DHS agencies, but excluding money for ICE, any more money for ICE, and for Secretary Noem's office. Third, in light of the behavior we've seen from the lawless behavior we've seen from ICE and Border Patrol and the response of Secretary Noem to defend it reflexively and to blame the victims, I've called for her resignation or impeachment. And finally, because shutdowns create chaos, I'm continuing to push solutions like the Prevent Government Shutdown Act, a bill that would automatically keep the government funded if Congress doesn't get its job done, so we don't keep lurching from crisis to crisis like this on the back of our workers and those who depend on the federal government. I'm also a supporter of no budget, no pay. In other words, if we don't get a budget done, if we shut down, Congress does not get paid. And that actually has worked very well in California, where since they instituted that rule, budgets have been on time consistently. So I hope that's clear, and if not, I'll look for your questions on those particular issues. A couple of things I'm working on for my own part. I continue to focus on representing our region in Congress with an eye towards science and innovation, a prosperous and functioning border, support for our military and veterans, and support for the vibrancy and beauty that make San Diego a great place for residents and tourists alike. A few of my current efforts, as second-ranking Democrat on the Energy Subcommittee, I'm working hard on lowering the cost of energy by bringing more cleaner energy online. My E-Permit Act passed the House in December last year and would modernize the permit process for projects like renewable energy, housing, and transportation and make the process much more visible and digitized and online for the public. The Trump administration has stopped permitting clean energy projects, even though markets and other countries realize that renewables are the fastest and most efficient way to feed our needs. My Certain Act would ensure federal agencies handle project authorizations and environmental reviews fairly and efficiently, and would hold the Trump administration to a time clock on that foot dragging. I have a bipartisan Speed and Reliability Act that would accelerate the process of building electric transmission lines to carry energy from where it's generated to where it's needed. This will lower costs for consumers and prevent blackouts. Just to reemphasize, all of these things I'm doing in energy are to provide more energy and cleaner energy, but more energy is what we need to meet the demand we're going to see. And if we don't meet the demand, that's going to drive already expensive bills up. I have a bipartisan Fix Our Forest Act that would reduce the threat of catastrophic mega fires in California and across the country. That, as you know, is a huge danger to property, to the environment, and it's very expensive for us. It's close to becoming law. It passed out of the House in 2024. It's been taken up by the Senate with a companion bill and passed out of the Senate Agriculture Committee with a strong bipartisan vote. I hope it'll pass out of both chambers of Congress and then head to the President's desk to be signed into law. We're also making progress to tackle the housing shortage from Washington, D.C. for places like San Diego and across the country. 2 weeks ago, the House passed the Housing for the 21st Century Act, which included several of my priorities to build more affordable and accessible housing nationwide. It included my Build More Housing Near Transit Act, which will encourage the development of more housing near transportation projects that receive federal funding, and my Broadband and Telecommunications Rail Act to make it easier to deploy broadband infrastructure and get Americans connected to the high-speed internet quicker. In last year's Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, I secured several wins for our service members, their families, and for San Diego. The bill included my Smart Ship Repair Act, which will bolster San Diego's ship repair industry and protect critical jobs. San Diego is a home to a vibrant ship repair industry that accounts for over 8,000 jobs and contributed more than $3.7 billion to the region's economy in 2023. And we want the defense industry to be dealing with our shipyards in a way that makes sense for them and keeps them going. On health care, we're going to suffer greatly from the Medicaid cuts in the Republican big bill. My district is fairly affluent, the 50th district. It's the fifth least dependent of all the congressional districts on Medicaid. We call it Medi-Cal in California. But even in the fifth least dependent congressional district in all of California, 21% of my constituents depend on Medi-Cal. 21%, that's a fifth. And a lot of those people will lose care. Also, the Republicans have not allowed the reauthorization of the affordable health care subsidies that people use to buy insurance in the market. Those people will lose health care. They're just not going to be able to afford insurance on the market. But everyone will pay more for health care as people start to go to the emergency room for their basic health care needs and drive all costs up. That means the insurance bills for everybody go up. So I'm going to work with anyone, Republican or Democrat, to lower costs and protect access to care. I know Republicans see this coming, and there's at least a few of them who want to work with us to solve the problem. Finally, I just want to let you know I'm really proud of the results my staff has brought in constituent service right here in San Diego. My office has returned a total of $23.5 million in veterans and military benefits, Social Security payments, federal tax refunds, and many other federal benefits that you have all earned and had a hard time turning the cranks in the federal government. That's been since we took office in 2013. Our team works hard every day to serve you and help you get the answers and funds you're owed from the federal government. So if you have an issue, I hope you'll call us and give us a chance to help you out. So before we hand it over to our guests and get to your questions, I want to say I appreciate so much from hearing from you. And if you're ever having any trouble with federal agency or being affected by what's going on in Washington, D.C., please call out to my office so we can help. If you have input on the vote that's coming up, please call, let our staff know. We take all those calls very seriously, pay attention to them all. I'd also encourage you to sign up for my newsletter where you can get updates from me every week about what I'm working on. We try to make it educational. We try not to be too political. We just want to explain what's going on for people. But if you want a good sense of what's happening from my perspective, please sign up for the newsletter. You can do that by pressing *6 at any time during the call. And with that, I want to engage Mark Delich. He's the Vice President for government relations at ForwardUS, FWD.US, to talk about where immigration policy stands and what we have to do to achieve real change. ForwardUS is a great organization I've worked with over the years. They work with policymakers, community leaders to advance better and more politically resilient solutions on criminal justice and immigration. And I'm grateful to have Mark join us today. Mark, why don't you give us some thoughts about where we are on immigration reform and how this enforcement is going and not going well, and some thoughts about where we might be able to move forward. Mark?
Great. Thank you, Congressman. It's great to be joining you and everyone on the call tonight. As mentioned, my name is Mark Delich. I'm with ForwardUS, and we are a national immigration policy and advocacy organization based in Washington, D.C. I'll spend a few minutes talking about the current immigration landscape and some of the partial government shutdown that is affecting DHS that Congressman mentioned. Congressman, first, I want to thank you for your leadership in Congress, and in particular, the Stop Excessive Force Act, Immigration Act that you touched on earlier, because that bill gets at something really fundamental, that if we're going to have immigration enforcement in this country, it has to operate under the same standards of accountability and transparency that we expect from every other law enforcement agency. The body cameras, clear identification, no flashbangs in our neighborhoods, those should not be controversial asks. And as you mentioned, the killings this winter in Minneapolis changed the conversation around immigration. And the public saw federal agents operating without accountability, without restraint, and in direct conflict with the facts that the administration was putting out. And that was a real turning point. But those killings also exposed a deeper problem, and that we are trying to enforce our way through a broken immigration system, and it does not work. There are millions of people who have lived in this country for years, decades, most folks, raising families, paying taxes, and contributing to their communities. And without an earned pathway to legalization, every enforcement action risks tearing apart a family that has deep roots here. And the public is seeing that playing out in real time. Congress has to do both, rein in enforcement and fix the underlying system. And I want to talk a little about the money, which, Congressman, you mentioned, because the scale of what Republicans in Congress handed DHS is pretty hard to wrap your head around. And last year, the reconciliation bill gave DHS $191 billion on top of its regular budget. And as you mentioned, it's better funded than almost every military in the world. ICE alone got more than $75 billion. That's enough to fund the agency at current levels for roughly 7 years. Most of that money hasn't even been spent yet. And without new appropriations, DHS still has enough to keep operating until late 2027 without another dime from Congress. And this isn't just about building up ICE headquarters. They are pushing money out into local communities. There's something called the 287G program, which deputizes local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration laws. We at Forward just published a brief on this. ICE has expanded 287G agreements by over 900% since January 2025, from 135 agreements to over 1,370. The Trump administration revived the 287G task force model that was shut down under President Obama because of documented racial profiling abuses. But they also added something new. ICE is now paying full salaries, benefits, and performance bonuses to local officers who make immigration arrests. This, along with the White House directive to meet a quota of 3,000 daily arrests, is a very dangerous combination. And we estimate that ICE could distribute between $1.4 and $2 billion to local law enforcement this year alone. That would dwarf all other federal law enforcement funding combined. And the research is clear. These programs do not reduce crime. What they do is increase racial profiling, keep kids out of school, and make immigrant communities less safe for everybody. So I just want to put some of the line items in context. Congress has spent $45 billion just on ICE detention beds. That's enough to fund the Children's Health Insurance Program for nearly 2 full years, covering 7 million kids. There's $15 billion for deportation flights. Alone could cover the WIC Supplemental Nutrition Program for over 2 years, feeding nearly 7 million mothers and children. What Congress gave to ICE is more than the entire annual budget of states like Alaska, South Dakota, West Virginia, or Arkansas. everything those states spend on school, roads, hospitals, public safety combined. And what the public is telling us, we're seeing, is 60% of Americans now view ICE unfavorably. 62% say that the administration has gone too far deploying agents in the cities. And when voters learn how much money ICE already has, only 14% want to send it more. The majority want that money redirected programs that make life more affordable for working families. And while, as mentioned, the federal government's in a partial shutdown, with the appropriation bill Congressman mentioned, Congress could easily fund the parts of DHS that have broad consensus, TSA, Coast Guard, FEMA. And I would argue that Congress should not send another dollar to ICE at a minimum until ICE funding is returned to its historical levels before the reconciliation bill turns it into the most heavily funded law enforcement agency in the federal government. And whatever funding ICE does receive going forward should come with the standards that you've laid out in the Stop Excessive Force Act, Force and Immigration Act. And that should extend to every local law officer being deputized and paid with the federal dollars under 287G. So thank you. Happy to answer any questions, and back to you, Congressman.
Mark, I just say, the trade-offs in that big, beautiful bill were astounding statements of values, that, you would provide all this money to enforce this excessive enforcement from ICE and the Border Patrol. What they cut was Medicaid. They cut health care for people. They cut food assistance for people. And all, by the way, keeping taxes low for people who could afford to pay more. And I just think, to me, I see a lot of stuff in this job, but the heartbreaking stuff is what I see around the people who are striving. And, our immigrants are such models to me of people to be admired. These dreamers who've never known any other country, came over when they were small children, to have that status under the Obama administration, you had to be in school or the military. You couldn't be in the trouble with the law. They were the kind of people, they were pre-screened to be the kind of people we would want to be fellow American citizens. I was born in Springfield, Ohio. We didn't spend a lot of time there, but I know that's where the Haitians are having such an issue. Now that's more nationwide, but Springfield was decimated, like a lot of Midwestern towns, by the loss of manufacturing, and the Haitians were bringing it back. They were filling up the schools. They were starting small businesses. A lot of those immigrants, Haitian men, I think, are disproportionately employed in taking care of the elderly here. These are people who are just trying to feed their families. And then what we've done to the Afghans who stood side by side with us, and who we should be taking care of and preventing them from being killed by the Taliban for their loyalty to us. Now we're not even standing by them. So I just think it's a really dark time. We talk a lot about ICE enforcement, but we got to get the bigger immigration picture right. And I appreciate the work that you're all doing. This is a really sorry time for this country. I must say, a nation of immigrants, turning our back on our history and what makes us strong. Marianne, I'm ready to take some questions if you like, and maybe Mark can help us with the ICE and immigration ones too.
Oh, okay, sounds good. I want to remind the people who are listening that if at any time you'd like to ask a question during tonight's town hall, please press *3, and you will be transferred to a member of our staff who will put you into the queue for questions. We've received several questions in advance, too, from people who signed up to participate in the town hall. So I'm going to start with one of the questions that was submitted in advance, and then we're going to go to the callers that are on the line. Keith from a neighborhood in San Diego wrote into us and asked you, Scott, can you explain what the SAVE Act passing would do to members of our community when they go to vote in the midterms? And are our midterms at risk because of the SAVE Act? Maybe you could tell us what the SAVE Act does. Start there, please.
Right. The SAVE Act is the Republicans' effort to require documentation, proof of citizenship to vote. And, I do know that there's a sense among Americans that maybe it'd be okay if you showed ID to vote. I think most people have the idea that you'd maybe show your driver's license or your student ID or, your veteran's card or whatever. But this is really something quite different. They want to see your birth certificate. They want to see a passport, and they want to see it both when you register and when you vote, and a lot of people would have trouble meeting the documentary requirements. It also, if you think about the issues it raises, a married woman whose last name is not the same as on her Social Security card would have trouble voting. Active duty military who don't have a passport, their birth certificate, they're out. Naturalized citizens who can't find their certificate of naturalization, never got a passport, they're out. This is really a way to keep people from voting. And I have to say, it's fair to say that this is really a solution seeking a problem. The Heritage Foundation, which is not in any way a left-wing leaning organization, they analyzed voter fraud in the swing states over the past decades. Heritage, like 25 years in Arizona, 27 years in Georgia, 17 in Michigan, 13 in Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Look back decades, had millions and millions of votes cast, and they saw literally tens of cases of reported fraud. In Arizona, for instance, 42 million votes cast, 36 cases of fraud. In Nevada, 8 million votes cast, 8 cases of fraud. North Carolina, 81 million votes cast, 58 cases of fraud. I mean, this is not a problem. This is a way to keep people from voting, and that's why I think we should oppose it. If you want to talk seriously about, voter ID restrictions that make sense, I think we should engage in that, but this is really an attempt to make it impossible for people to vote. And that would be the effect in our district. I think a lot of people just wouldn't show up, and it would really disenfranchise us from our own democracy, which is supposed to be a government of, for, and by the people. It would not be.
Thank you, Scott. Mark, I'm wondering if you could take this next question. There's a gentleman, Don from Escondido. We're going to go to you. You're on the line. I'm going to unmute you in a minute. He has a question about the root causes of immigration problems. So, Don, are you there?
Yes,
Can you hear
thank
me?
you. I can.
You're live.
Thank you. Congressman Peters, I want to thank you first for your service, and I agree with a lot of the points you all have made this evening, and I am really looking for Congress to put together a bill to address the root cause of these immigration actions that are putting our communities in jeopardy. To illustrate the fact, I had recently spoken with a relative whose neighbor helped them remodel the bathroom and fixed his car and did a lot of neat things. Of course, he's a retired person and aged like myself, but in the conversation, he told me that his neighbor is afraid to go to work, and he's doing all these side jobs to try to keep himself afloat with his family. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, he's undocumented. I said, what? And he's lived in his neighborhood for decades, has a family, his children are born and raised in the country, and here is a case where this individual who could be working in his proper job could be taken away from his family and the community where he has paid taxes, he's worked hard, he's raised his children. We need meaningful immigration reform.
Thank you, Don. Mark, you wanted to take a first pass at that question?
Sure. And I think the good thing is the overwhelming majority of Americans agree with you and also want to see this change. How that manifests itself in Congress has always been difficult. Before I was a Ford, I worked in the United States Senate for Senator John McCain and was on his staff in 2013 when we passed an immigration bill through the Senate. And we ran into a roadblock in a Republican-controlled House. And that dynamic has kind of stymied Congress from moving forward, just like how you get the dynamics right and when a bill moves. But you're absolutely right in that it needs to be done. There hasn't been meaningful immigration reform since 1990. Pardon me. And what we're seeing now is beginning of 2025, there are roughly 6 million people that had a temporary status. That's a temporary protected status, on parole, waiting for an asylum hearing, things called U visas and T visas, people that witnesses of crimes, people that are waiting for here legally, went through a legal process that had a temporary status. And this is the first administration we've seen that has really tried to make as many people with legal status take away that status and make them undocumented. And so that's happened for over 1 million people. And Congressman brought up Springfield and Haitian Springfield. A lot of those people in Springfield had TPS. The administration just attempted to end the TPS program. It's currently going through litigation. But what we're seeing is people who have been here a long time, people who have been working, who don't have communities, countries they can go back to, there's still those statuses are being pulled and they're being made undocumented and being put in the situation that the gentleman you're talking about is. Afraid to work, unable to work in the open market. And it's just, there's not a ton of sense behind it. There are easy ways to do this. There's something called the Immigration Registry that's been around since the 1920s. It hasn't been updated since Ronald Reagan's bill in 1986. But essentially it allowed people who've been here over a certain amount of time, 10, 15, 20, or 20 years, to come forward and essentially get in line. A lot of people think there is a line people can get into and people just refuse to do it. That's not the case. People fall out of status for a lot of reasons. People come here looking for work, and there's just no ability to adjust once you have it. President Biden, last Congress, when he, 3 years ago, tried an executive action that people that have been here that are undocumented are married, and they have somebody who can sponsor and they could adjust status, but they can't because there's something called the 10-year bar. If you're married to somebody and they could sponsor you and you have a green card available to you, to take advantage of that, you have to leave your family, leave the country for 10 years before you can come back in and take advantage of it. There's all sorts of things like that that just make it really, really hard for people to get status or to adjust their status that, we just need bipartisan support to fix.
Yeah. Mark, my first year in Congress was 2013, and you were working with the Senate. They got 68 votes for that immigration bill. President Obama was on board, and we couldn't get Speaker Boehner to let us vote on it. But like the components of that, correct me if I'm wrong, just to simplify a little bit, are to sort of adjust the numbers of people who can come in to meet the needs we have for employment. To figure out a way for people who have been here and been working and paying taxes to work their way to citizenship, not for free, but to take that path, and to provide for border security. By the way, that was a big component of it as well. It was I think $25 billion in that bill for border security. Is that generally the outline of what an answer would look like still?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
I would say the other thing that's really galling and I think outrageous about this administration is that people are going to their legally scheduled appointments to try to follow that road to citizenship or to the green card. That's where they're getting picked up. So they're complying with the law, and the administration who knows that they're there, they go to the legal scheduled hearing and take them away. And I just think it seems so un-American to me. It's just astounding to me. Marianne?
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to go to another question, a caller, Deborah from Pacific Beach. Deborah, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you're live with the Congressman.
Thank you. It's really funny. We're talking about immigration, and I am an immigration attorney. I find this a very interesting topic, given the fact that I'm also Native American. So my I know, we could go on and on about this, but, and if you guys ever want some opinions and you ever want some great insight from somebody who has actual boots on the ground, please feel free to reach out and ask me. My question goes back down to the Tijuana River being newly returned after a 20-year hiatus from California, a native daughter of California as well, born and raised here in Pacific Beach, that the Tijuana River has just been a bane of existence since I was a child. And my question is, what can we do to get this taken care of? Because It is a travesty. It's an environmental problem. It's a health problem. What can we do? I know people are saying that things are getting done, but not fast enough. And quite frankly, I'm not sure Mexico's feet are being held to the fire.
Great question, and I think definitely I agree with you. It's not fast enough, but I do believe that it's getting more attention than it probably has in decades. We've taken this up as a cause in my office. I represent Coronado, which is has a little bit different effects from the ones in Imperial Beach, which is right next to the river. But what happened is, basically in the late 2010s, the growth from Tijuana really started to cause the infrastructure to really break down, and a problem that had been persistent and intermittent got really drastic and it's become one of the great environmental disasters in the hemisphere. And we started to work on it. When we came up on the USMCA renewable under President Trump, well, first of all, when we came in, the allocation of money for the entire border, the Border Water Infrastructure Program, the United States-Mexico border, was $5 million. That was what they had allocated. So right away we started, mostly in conjunction with Congressmember Vargas, who represents the South Bay. We just started working to get that number up. And we got it up to, $35 million a year, but not in the range that we needed to take care of the problem. In 1996, we had built this treatment plant to take care of overflow sewage from Mexico, and it was designed to treat 25 million gallons a day. Well, it turned out we thought we could repair it for $400 million, but found out that it hadn't been maintained, and the ultimate bill was $650 million. But the good news is that we've aggregated that money, and we're under construction, and it's partly done, up to 35. So that project's actually going on very well. We got that money from the USMCA. We got that money from under the Biden administration with cooperation from a bipartisan group of legislators, including a lot of Republican former Navy SEALs. I'd say that is going along very well. And to be honest with you, like you've heard, I think very little of the Trump administration, but the administrator of the EPA has made this his personal project, and he's advanced the schedule for that in a way that I think is helpful for us, and I think we have to say thank you for that. The other thing they've done, we negotiated in 2022 a treaty with Mexico that says we're going to do our part, you have to do your part, and they have done some of those projects, but subsequently we've negotiated another follow-on treaty with Mexico with timelines that they all think are going to be made. So I would say check back in 2027 and 2028. I think we're really on track for what we're looking for is a 100% solution, and I think we're going to make really good progress. The one thing I think we have to deal with too is chemical pollution. So sewage is it's obviously very toxic in volume, but it's relatively easy to deal with. There's chemical pollution coming from industrial operations in Mexico. Many of them may be American companies. We've got to get a handle on that too, but we're working on it. I think the progress has been really good. I think, one of the things that's happened is we've raised expectations, so there's a lot more attention on it. But I really think there's a lot of progress, and I think we're going to be a lot better off in just a year or two.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to go now. Well, first, I want to remind people, if you're the listeners that are on the line, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *3 to ask a question, and a member of our staff will take your call and we'll put you in the queue. I wanted to go to one of the questions that was submitted online. This was a question from Doris in Escondido, and she asked, what is your opinion, Scott, about other measures that can be used to force Congress to work on funding bills instead of shutdowns? Like, what are the options to shut down? And what would be the reality of cutting not just travel, but paychecks to Congress during a shutdown?
Doris, I think it's a really good question. I'm just appalled. I've been through now 3 big shutdowns in my years in Congress, and they're awful. They're terrible for a lot of reasons because, a lot of families depend on the federal government salaries, and, we shouldn't be using those people as leverage. There are a lot of programs that are really important. Like I mentioned some like Head Start and Impact Aid for kids, military kids in San Diego schools. There's a lot of things that the federal government does that are really important to people, scientific research grants and so forth. And those all get cut off, and it's really hard to run a military, by the way, when you're trying to plan, multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar projects over these fits and starts. So I think shutdowns are wrong. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill called No Budget, No Pay, which, as you suggested, is we don't get the budget done, and we shut down, we don't get paid. And I think that should stick. And the reason I think it's a good bill, I think it would work, is what we saw in California. They instituted that rule. They were always late with their budget, and then they instituted this rule that every day you're late, you get doctor pay. And the first year they had that, they were 3 days late, and they realized, oh my gosh, we're getting our pay cut, and they've never been late since. And you can disagree with what's in the budget, but it's been on time, and that's what we want in Congress. We need our own skin in the game. So if we're going to be playing with other people's money, we ought to have our same money on the line. I think that would provide us a real incentive. I think we should also do no budget recess, which sounds like, maybe nothing to you, but on this most recent shutdown under Speaker Johnson, he let us all go home. We were never able to go home in the previous shutdowns, and that meant we were all together in D.C. We wanted to be home. We wanted to be with our families. I wanted to be in the warm weather in San Diego, but I was forced to be around these people, and we actually had to talk about what the solution was. And when you let everyone leave town, it's out of sight, out of mind. So these people are getting paid. They're not doing their job. And then I think there's also something called the Prevent Government Shutdown Act that would just do an automatic funding at the same level for a period of time if there's not an agreement. And I think that's better than nothing. But I think we should do our job, and I think those incentives should be lined up so our money's on the line as well as everybody else's, and not this thing where they hold your pay and pay you later. Just by the way, I'm in a position where I can donate my pay during the shutdown, which I traditionally do, to nonprofits that help people, enlisted families, food banks, and so forth. I do that, but that's not really going to move the needle. That's just something I can do. But I think everyone's money should be on the line. I think that would provide the incentives to keep us from doing this shutdown anymore.
Thank you, Scott. We have a lot of questions that came in online, and we're going to go to another one of those in a minute. But first, we have an online poll set up. So listeners, if you're online, if you're still on the line, the question is, the poll question is, do you believe Kristi Noem should be impeached? If the answer is yes, please press 1. If you don't think so and that your answer is no, please press 2. So again, this is a question on the phone line. If you think Kristi Noem should be impeached, press 1. If you don't think she should be impeached, press 2. And we'll come back to those results after this next question. I'm going to go to a question that was submitted online. And just a reminder for those of you who are still listening, star 3 to ask a question and star 6 to sign up for our newsletter. The Congressman mentioned it in the beginning of his remarks. Once a week, we send out a pretty informative newsletter, and it gives you a lot of information about his work in Washington and San Diego. And it also tells you about upcoming town halls like the event we're having tonight. So, Scott, here's a question from Barbara in Carmel Valley. Her question is, if Democrats take back the House in the midterm elections, what will the top priorities be?
Well, thanks for that question, Barbara. I mean, obviously, say we just take back the House, or even if we take back the House and the Senate, Donald Trump is still the president. So I think the most important thing is to stop the bleeding, stop us from digging deeper in this hole. And so Democrats, if we're in control of the House, we can vote against a lot of stuff the kinds of things that Republicans did, like the big, beautiful bill, that we would be able to stop. Second is we would be in a position to do oversight. There's a lot going on in this in this administration about how they execute the laws, how they, how they're, handling ICE, all the corruption that's going on. Where's this money go? Where's all this? What about Donald Trump making all this money on his meme coin, basically selling pardons for favors? I think we would want to ask a lot of questions about that and try to shine some light on that. But, Democrats can't just be the opposition party. I'm part of the New Dem coalition. We've got an affordability agenda that we would like to propose as a positive step forward. I think there's costs that are really crushing working Americans right now. All the elections have been about that. We need to respond. And we focus on 5 different things: groceries and household essentials. That has a lot to do with the tariffs. Healthcare, again, a lot to do with cutting Medicaid and the subsidies for insurance. Housing, we want to cut red tape. I mentioned some of the bills that we're working on in Congress. Families, paid family medical leave is really important. We got to figure out a way to get more people into child care, expand that workforce, and make that cheaper. And then energy is something that I work on. We have to reform the permitting rules to make it faster to build clean energy, make sure that there's a grid that can handle all the energy that we have and get it from where it's generated to where it needs to go. And in an atmosphere where, this is for the first time in a long time, in two or three decades, we're going to see an increase in demand for electricity. I think as much as 25% in a short period of time. Obviously, if you don't increase supply, that's going to increase costs, and we're already seeing a huge burden being borne by people with electricity costs. By the way, my fire bill has to do with that too, because 30% of electricity bills in California have to do with the work that utilities do to prevent wildfires. My bill would get the federal government to come invest in federal lands in California and take that burden off taxpayers and ratepayers in California. But we have some real ideas about dealing with affordability, so I think that has to be the agenda. Stop Trump, oversight of Trump, and then we have to make sure that we're providing our own positive agenda for how to move forward and make things better for folks.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to go to the results of our online poll, and then I'm going to go back to questions from callers. The question again was, should Kristi Noem be impeached? We had 285 people respond, 266 said yes, so 93% said yes, and 19% said no. So yes was 93% and no's were 7%. Next, I'm going to go to Greg from San Marcos. Greg, let's see, I'm trying to make you live right here. Greg, you have a question about the Epstein victims and the State of the Union, I believe. Are you here? You're live now.
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hello.
Yeah.
All right. Hello. Hey, thank you, Congressman, for everything you're doing. It can't be easy out there. So a two-part question. I'll just get to it here. So have you, our fellow members, considered inviting as guests to the State of the Union Epstein survivors? If not, I think it's a great idea. And my second part, kind of related, as far as on the corrupt kick, if and when Democrats assume control of the legislative branch, what actions do you think you'd like to take to prevent the overreach and abuse of the executive power and the acts of open bribery, corruption, and profiteering, all of which we've seen at unprecedented levels, from ever happening again by any president, Democrat or Republican? And
I'd say, first of all, on the State of the Union thing, I think that's a great idea for bringing a guest. I think a lot of people are really struggling with whether to go at all, given that, we've always gone as a sign of respect for the office and the president. He does not respect the office of the president. He does not respect Congress. But I think if you went, a good guest would be an Epstein victim, and I think there's bipartisan support for getting to the bottom of that. And for God's sakes, this is a fight that they picked. They all ran on saying we're gonna uncover the Epstein files, and they are sure slow walking it, and it gives you every appearance that there's a problem that Donald Trump doesn't want you to see. Look, the problem with this, what we've learned is that, so much of the presidency and the Congress operate on what was literally a gentleman's agreement from 250 years ago. And, a lot of the norms have broken down. And, I think the biggest problem we have right now is that Republicans are not calling out Trump on behalf of the institution. So it was the 1970s when Republicans were so outraged just at President Nixon lying that they came out and they forced him to resign under threat of impeachment. We don't see that from the Republicans now, and I think it's really shocking because, we talked about Hunter Biden. I don't know what he probably got a position on a board maybe he didn't deserve. That maybe that was nepotism, but the amount of money he got as a result of that was in the single-digit millions, and we're talking about the Trump family has made $1.4 billion off this presidency into their pockets. And so the first thing we need, as Democrats, we should certainly introduce legislation and pass it, which I think we'll do, but we need Republicans to say, hold on, this is wrong, whether it's a Republican or Democrat. And I think that's our biggest obstacle. But I think the thing I was saying before about oversight that might change people's mind is that if we can put enough light on this, I think it could shame the Republicans into doing the right thing. But it is just amazing to me. Don't ever talk to me about Hunter Biden again. This corruption dwarfs anything we've seen. And also I think the use of the pardon power for favors is just astounding and really discouraging. And I think, again, we have one man who's off the rails and a lawbreaker and a criminal, but he's the president of the United States, and we need the entire Congress, not just the Democrats, to call him out. And that's, I think, our biggest challenge right now.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Scott. I'm going to go to another caller. We have quite a few people in the queue here, Scott.
Yep.
This is something. Okay. This is Connor Duncan from Little Italy, wants to know about the stock trading ban. Connor, you are live online. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you so much, and thank you, Congressman. So I've seen concerning reports that other members of Congress are buying stocks in companies that have contracts with ICE and are essentially profiting off of this massive expansion of ICE and the DHS. Proposals to ban congressional stock trading have pretty broad support across Republicans, Democrats, Independents. There are a variety of bills and discharge petitions being circulated, but I don't know your stance on those currently. I know you've had some concerns that you want these to apply to the president, but I think we all know that this president is never going to put limitations on himself like that. So do you support passing a ban, a standalone ban now, and then maybe expanding it to the presidency once a Democrat is back in the White House? Thank you.
I have supported the bans. I've supported I signed the discharge petition, and our bill would cover both Congress and the president. I do think that, and I would support a standalone bill, but I think the question we have is, why are we pointing the gun at Congress when the level of corruption is so enormous in the presidency? So I should also say I support a ban. Also, I already abide by any of the laws, any of the restrictions that any of the laws would pass. We don't trade individual stocks anymore in my family. We are in mutual funds where we don't have any decision power over what's invested in. That's what the stock bans would require of members of Congress. We already comply with that, so I don't have any problem with that. But I do think it's sort of artificial not to suggest that Trump should also abide by that. I think it's interesting to see whether the Speaker will allow us to vote on this, because I do believe that there's a lot of his own caucus who are making those kinds of trades, and I think are quietly telling him behind the scenes, this is how I'm making my money. Please don't take it away from me. So, but I support it, and I think it's time.
Thank you, I'm going to go to another caller from Rancho Penasquitos. I believe the name is Ramses, or Ramses. I hope I pronounced it correctly. You had a call about Scott's ICE enforcement standards bill, I believe. Let's see. Are you there? And I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Ramses? You're live.
Hi.
Now.
Yes, hi. I'm right here. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hello?
No, it's my fault. Yeah. We can hear you now.
Yes, hi. Can I ask my question?
Yeah.
Yes, please. You're live on the town hall with the congressman, and we're.
Oh,
we're
okay.
happy
Yes,
to
hi.
take
Thank you.
questions.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah, hi. Thank you. Hi, Scott. It's great to hear your voice. After I volunteered for your campaign like 10 years ago, so it's great to see that you've been leading the district and making so much progress in DC for us. I'm here in San Diego. I've worked on drafting SB 627, the sort of the state equivalent of a part of what your bill does in DC. And as you probably know, this SB 627 was recently enjoined by a federal court. And I'm wondering if you're seeing your bill as sort of the federal solution to what's going on. You had mentioned holding federal officers accountable to the same standards that we're trying to establish here in California, and more importantly, how is it that we longtime supporters of yours can continue to help support, especially this bill that's so important right now?
Right. Well, I think it's we did this bill in November because we started to be concerned about it. This was before what happened in Minneapolis. And, it was kicking around a little bit. As soon as the two killings in Minneapolis came about, we got a tremendous amount of support. We have over 100 co-sponsors, and we have a lot of support from the community and a lot of organizations. Right now, we only have Democrats. So if you can help me get some Republicans on this and, people who don't buy this notion that these people can abide by the same standards that our local police, our sheriffs, and our state troopers all abide by when they're taking care of our communities. It just to me is very logical, and I think that they're very, very frightened of stepping out in front of Trump, but that's what we need. So we need more courage from those folks, and the more people who speak up and ask about it, I think the more likely they are to find courage and put pressure on this president to do the right thing.
Mark, is there anything you'd like to add to this question or answer?
Yeah, I think one thing that's come up some is particularly with the DHS funding fight is I think both these things they're not mutually exclusive. Within the congressman's bill, the standards that ICE should be following should be followed, and ICE also does not need more money. They have a tremendous budget, a lot of which is going to activities that the American people don't want to see, and so we're not in a situation that if they kind of split the difference and adopt some reforms, they should also get billions of more dollars on the top of what was given to them through reconciliation.
Mark, I would say I want to thank you for being with us tonight. And also, folks can get some of the documents you're talking about, some of your work on your website. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Ford.us, FWD.us. And so the brief that I talked about today on 287G, but we also have a ton of resources, whether you're looking for kind of state fact sheets. We also have district and metro fact sheets that give a lot of good information on immigration, plus kind of from 101 to 201 level, basic kind of like immigration issues across the board, from things on high school to the broader document committee to kind of everything between. So a bunch of good resources there for people that are interested in immigration policy.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Marianne?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for being with us. We are out of time. Unfortunately, we are about out of time. So I just want to remind people to please press *6 to sign up for our newsletter. For more information about the Congressman's work in D.C. and San Diego, or if you need help from our office with something related to a federal agency, please go to our website at scottpeters.house.gov. And then, Scott, if you have any closing remarks, we'll let you have the last word, and then we will wrap up.
I always want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. I know this is a really, really tough time. It's been a really long year, and it's frightening in many respects. We want to hear from you, so just be in touch with us about what's on your mind, and whether it's through emails or calling the staff, let us know. If you got any good ideas for us, or we're certainly open to hearing them. But we're in an unusual time, and we're looking out for San Diego and trying to get this government, the government of and for and by the people of the United States, back on track. This is the most important democracy in the history of the world, I believe, and it's coming up on its 250th year, and we've gone 249 years without these kinds of challenges. So remember that democracy is not something we're entitled to. It's something we have to fight for. People fought for it over and over again. People have died for it. This is a moment of challenge for our democracy. I hope you'll all step up with me and defend it, and we'll all remember why we love the United States of America and why we want it to be, again, something that's admired and respected around the world. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight.
Thank you.